Hi, welcome to the All Things Divorce podcast. I'm Launi Sheldon, the host of All Things Divorce podcast. And today we have Greg Davis on our show. And we'll be talking today about how to choose an attorney if you're going through a divorce. Greg is a good friend of mine. He's a very well-respected attorney in Arizona. He's one of those attorneys that actually cares about his clients. And I've worked with him before on cases. And I've worked actually against him, but he's a great guy. Greg has been practicing law in Arizona since 1992 and has, for that lion's share of time, concentrated on complex family law matters, including high conflict custody cases, business valuations, and really everything in between. So for the last several years, Greg has helped spearhead the collaborative divorce movement, and he is the founding member of Davis, Blaze, Stone, and Holder. Following a year-long sabbatical, he has now reopened as a solo and is Davis Limited. So also remember, as always, the information provided on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Greg and I are only licensed to practice in Arizona, and listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship with either me or Greg. So today, Greg, this is a really interesting subject for me because there are so many different kinds of attorneys. You know that, I know that we've worked with some not really nice attorneys, but I think attorneys are really important. There's a difference just between an attorney and a certain personality type that person needs. And so today, I just wanted to ask you, can you tell the audience how to choose, how would you go about choosing a family law attorney if you needed one for yourself?
Thanks, Lonnie. That's a really good question. If I needed a lawyer, the first thing I would do is look for someone who would not tell me what I want to hear. I've worked with, dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of lawyers over the years. And I can usually tell on the other side of a case whether the lawyer's telling his or her client what the client wants to hear, or whether the lawyer's telling the client what the lawyer really thinks is the truth. And there's a big difference. I say to my clients, usually during the first meeting, that I've been doing this 30 years. I've never told a client what he wants to hear, and I'm not going to start with you. And so if you want a cheerleader, if you want a lawyer that's going to co-sign whatever you want and not argue with you and not be a loyal servant to you, I'm not your guy.
Let's back that up for a second too. So yeah. Be a loyal servant. What does that look like when you see that?
The way I see it, a loyal servant will tell you when you have food in your teeth, right? A loyal servant is not going to allow you to walk around the dinner with the Queen of England with a big chunk of meat hanging out of your teeth and you be the last one to know. And if I needed a lawyer, a family lawyer especially, I would probably be in a somewhat emotionally vulnerable state. I might not notice my own bad behavior. I might be nose blind to my own smell. I might be blind to my own faults. I might be just completely ignorant of what I'm doing to my children because I'm hurting so badly. And we all know that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And so I think that goes beyond the typical scenario of cycles of abuse. It also means when you're hurting yourself, you're so focused inward, you're self-centered. You're not selfish necessarily, but you're self-centered, and so you're not looking at how your behavior affects people around you.
And Greg, I know this wasn't anything that we talked about, but I do kind of want to bring it up because I know you've got it. When somebody does choose a lawyer that's simply a cheerleader, what are the problems with that? Like, what does that
Ooh,
look like in problems? Like more attorney fees, not resolving the issues. What does that look like?
certainly more attorney's fees, because when I've got a lawyer on the other side of my case who is not appropriately communicating risk to his or her client, um, the client is emboldened, and often is unjustifiably emboldened by what their attorney is telling them is the likely outcome. And I sit there and I'm looking and I'm incredulous. I cannot believe this attorney is actually suggesting to his client that, say, his client's going to get sole legal decision making over a child because my client is a nurse who works nights, or even a bartender,
Or
right?
or the fireman or the pilot.
Exactly. Uh, we all know what moves the judge's needle, or tends to. And those of us who care about that sort of thing are not going to waste our clients' money tilting at windmills.
So
Similarly,
go ahead.
in a declining real estate market, you might have opposing counsel telling his client, no, the house is worth $2 million. Don't settle for less than $1 million as an equalizing payment, when everyone knows it was worth $2 million 6 months ago, and now it's $1.7 million. Right? It just, not all lawyers are willing to do that, or willing to risk upsetting their clients.
So besides the cheerleading attorney, are there any other lawyers that you would say maybe stay away from?
Oh, wow.
No
Everyone
names.
thinks, of course, everyone thinks they want an aggressive lawyer. And the archetype of the aggressive lawyer is the last thing a family court judge wants to see.
That's a good point.
We all want to think that lawyers should be aggressive, and unfortunately zealous, which we all agree lawyers should be, and aggressive are not necessarily the same thing. So lawyers that use predatory animals as their logos or symbols are certainly the last people you really want representing you in court. You don't want a giant bulldog dealing with a child. A judge is evaluating all the time the credibility of the clients and the lawyers in front of him or her. And so if the judge is looking for a reasonable solution to a problem, and the judge is going to look out before his or her courtroom and think, this person has the solution or that person has the solution. But if you're complaining about the problem and not offering a solution, or if you are pointing fingers and blaming, you're going to get nowhere with the judge.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. That really does. Now, what if somebody already has that lawyer? What if somebody already has the lawyer? I think you know where I'm going with this, right? It's not great to switch lawyers every time you don't like something that they did. But if you have a lawyer that's really aggressive and is not really mediation friendly, should you switch? And what would that look like?
If you have a lawyer that really isn't mediation friendly, I would say absolutely you should switch, because mediation is how cases get settled and how clients save money. Trials are extraordinarily expensive. Even simple trials are extraordinarily expensive, because there's a set number of things that has to be done for trials, whether they are small or large, whether they're simple or complex. And those things themselves are expensive. Mediation, on the other hand, is a day of lawyer time, a day of mediator time probably half a day of mediator time since you're only paying half, and then it's over. So it's definitely worth switching if you have a lawyer who refuses to mediate. But if you have a lawyer who's simply unnecessarily aggressive, sit your lawyer down and tell your lawyer you don't want the lawyer to be chest pounding and sending nasty letters, and explain to your lawyer that you're going to have a relationship with your co-parent long after you forget that lawyer's name. And so if the lawyer is further polarizing you and your co-parent, that's awful for your children.
Okay, and if you don't have kids, well, whether you have kids or whether you have businesses, might there be one choice for someone with kids and one choice for somebody with kids and a business, and some choice maybe with just a business?
I think so. And you know, of all the lawyers I've worked against, I can think of a couple of lawyers who are brilliant and very well respected for their skill and knowledge. But they have a rather nasty bedside manner. Let's just call it a bedside manner. That kind of lawyer might actually be appropriate in a case where there are no children, because frankly, you want the best legal mind you can find to get you the best outcome you can get. Where there are no children, that is really all you need to consider, besides obviously the expense. But when you have children involved, sometimes you need a lawyer with a better bedside manner, and you need a lawyer who is going to understand that divorce isn't necessarily bad for children, but parental conflict is the best predictor of a bad outcome for a child. And lawyers who throw fuel on fire are just simply awful for children.
And speaking of that, I mean, not just awful for children, but some of them are pretty bad for the person. So I know in my practice that, I had clients who were very needy, and clients who needed, quite a bit of attention and really wanted to understand things. Is there a question or two that you can think of that maybe a client should ask the attorney when they're interviewing the attorney? And by the way, let's back up first. Should people interview attorneys?
Without question, you should interview attorneys. The most important factor any client should be looking for is, do I want to talk to this person? Am I willing to share everything with this person? If you don't tell me as a lawyer everything, I can't help you properly. And so if a client is not willing to open up, it makes things much, much harder. So I tell my client, if you're not comfortable with me, if you don't trust me, please find someone with whom you're comfortable and whom you trust, because otherwise the relationship doesn't work. It's a two-way street. Ask your lawyer how accessible he or she might be. I know personally, I have very unhealthy boundaries in as much as I give all my clients my mobile phone number. And I know that there are lots of lawyers who don't do that, and who could blame them. But for me, it's important that my clients be able to reach me on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday morning, because especially when children are involved, stuff happens on weekends. And
right.
I don't want my clients stewing anxiety ridden until Monday when they can reach me with burning questions. I want to be able to attend to their problem when the problem arises.
Yeah. And I love that about working with you too, is because I'm also that way. And so I would have clients sending me messages, and then I could send you a message, text you on a Saturday or Sunday, and get things resolved quickly. Of course, now I'm not practicing anymore, but that was a great thing about having a good relationship with another attorney, trying to get things resolved, because you don't want to be getting an attorney that's just super aggressive with everyone that they meet, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
You're very mediation friendly. You get the, great results for your clients. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we kind of just to wrap up on this?
Yeah, I'd like to at least put a plug in for collaborative divorce. I about 5 years ago, it occurred to me that litigation was not always the best model for divorce, and so I learned about the collaborative divorce movement, and since then I've joined Collaborative Professionals of Phoenix and the International Association of Collaborative Professionals, and I have worked on honing my skills where collaborative divorce is concerned. It's a completely different model. We have a rule of family law procedure specifically designed for collaboration. And in recent years, especially in Arizona, but in states around the country, public money for judges is drying up. And we're not giving judges enough money or good enough pension plans that were necessarily attracting the best and the brightest to the bench anymore. And in a lot of states, especially Arizona, we don't have a unified family court, so that everyone who wants to be a judge must serve rotations on family. And many of them, with a few notable exceptions who love what they do, don't want to be on the family bench. And my clients need the judge to care and to work carefully and listen carefully and make good and reasoned decisions. And that doesn't always happen. So collaboration takes the case out of the judge's hands. And even the best of judges are strangers to you and your children. And they don't know what's best for your family. And one day of meeting you and listening to you testify is not going to give them that great an idea of what might be best for you and your family. And so the only way to retain control over the outcome is to make good decisions for you and your family. And the collaborative process, which takes place entirely outside of court, is designed specifically to help you make those decisions for yourself and for your family. And those of us who practice collaborative divorce are very proud of the work we do, and have countless examples of families that don't break, they simply transition.
Yeah, that's a good way to phrase it. Instead of breaking, transitioning your family. Collaborative divorce is really great for a lot of different areas. It can be expensive, I think, at first, but less expensive in the long run because you're not going back to court. But maybe we could do a whole podcast on collaborative divorce and what that looks like.
Happy to do it. We could even put a panel together. Absolutely.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for being here today. I'm going to stop recording, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Launi. Take care.